While I'm gearing up, I just wanted you to see what I'm going to do here. One of my rods is going to get sewing thread, monofilament sewing thread. One of my reels will get that. One of my reels will get 2-pound test, micro ice. Third reel is going to get 3-pound test. And I'll use that rod and reel for a larger lure, for specks or whatever, for big perch. Just something a little bit heavier and bigger for whatever use. That's the plan today. Here we go. Get out my trusty line cutter. It's an old fingernail cutter, handy dandy. If you got an old fingernail cutter, that's a nice way to go. Tiny ultralight, ultralight reel for ice fishing. The rods are each 30 inches long. That's a nice length for if I'm in the shanty. I can still set the hook. I got plenty of room to set the hook. But if I'm fishing outdoors, it's just a nice length. I can stand up and fish easily. And when I'm sitting on a pail, I can set that hook and get a good hook set. And with a 30-inch rod, no longer than that, I'm able to hide from others what I'm doing fairly well. They can see if I'm catching a fish, but if that thing was 4 feet long or longer, that rod, then it's pretty hard to hide that. And I don't like people to see me catching fish because I like to fish alone. So I don't want to have people drilling holes around me, messing up the school of fish that I'm working. And you'll hear that theme off and on from me, that I like to fish alone. It's not that I'm antisocial, but when I'm fishing, I'm antisocial. I'm there to fish, not there to socialize. I'm going to just thread it through the guide, threading it through all the way up from the reel all the way up. That one's through. And the very final one, we are through. Notice I'm not putting it through the sneaky bobber yet. I'll do that when I'm fishing. Not until then. Otherwise, when I store the rod, that sneaky bobber will be bent over, and then it'll have a memory of being bent over, and it'll just stay bent over, and I don't want that. I want it nice and straight until it's time to fish. I'm going to tie the line, the new line, onto the old line. That's tricky to do with this really thin line. We're going to do the best we can. We're going to use a double uni knot. So a knot here and a knot here, and you pull it tight and those knots come together. I've got a YouTube video on how to tie a double uni knot. I do it with rope so that you guys can see what I'm doing. Check out my knot tying video on YouTube. It'll show you the different types of knots that I use when I'm fishing. It's only about 3 or 4 knots that you need to know. Now I'm going to moisten it. That lubricates it so it doesn't damage the line when you're pulling it tight. I'm slowly pulling those knots together now. Whoop, I pulled that one tight. Almost. This one's got a little loop in it. There, I got rid of that loop by pulling. Now I'm pulling the knots together. Here it goes. Together they go. Now I'm pulling a little bit. So I made the knot, made the other knot, pulled them loosely, not tight, just loose tight. And then I pulled on the strings, on the lines on each end, and pulled the knots together and tightened them up. Now I'm going to take and cut the tag ends. There are 2 tag ends that I'm going to cut. I'm going to make sure I have tag ends because it's frustrating after you struggle to tie that knot. If you cut the main line, I'm going to make sure again that I got the tag ends. And I do, so I'm going to cut them. Snip. And I get pretty close to the main line. The tag ends are too long there. There's too much sticking out. that will get in the way of winding in. When I'm winding in my line, that'll mess things up on my reel. So I'm going shorter. Yeah, now it's good. Now I can wind them in to the reel. Ha! Guess what I did? See what I did? I didn't put it through the bail. So now my line is not through the bail and the bail is closed. Well, that stinks, doesn't it? You know what we can do to fix that? Since we're all tied up to that spool, we'll just take the reel spool off. That center post has a cap on it. We'll get that cap off and then we can lift the spool out. Now I'm going to open up the bail. See what I'm doing with my left hand? I'm opening up the bail. Now I'm putting the spool back onto the reel. It's got to fit just right. Turn it and it'll sit in place. Now I can tighten that. And it's tight. Now I'm going to click the bail over and we can wind. Whew! That wasn't too bad, was it? That's a good trick to know. I'm kind of glad that happened while you were watching. Now I'm winding. And I hold my line tight. Let it slip through my fingers ahead of the reel. Oh, I felt the knot go through my fingers. So I'm going to make sure that that knot goes in a place that it's not going to be in my way. Yeah, it looks good. I think it looks good. Maybe I'll move it down a little bit lower so it's real low on the spool. Sometimes that's better, or real high on the spool. I kind of like real low on the spool if I can. I just moved it down real low on the spool. And now I'm going to wind. Now it's going to get caught on that spool. It always does because there's a little notch in that spool for storage of the line. That can be frustrating too because I want that line to come off the spool a certain way. I'm not sure yet which way. Whether it's got to be off this way or if the spool needs to be flipped over the other way. I got to get a few winds in and then check which way is backwards. See, it's going to drive you nuts doing this. I don't like to take it off the side way because, yeah, that can go on twisted then. I like to take it right off the top of the spool, but it's getting caught there every time. So I'm going to just flip it right over and try and see if that works. Yep, that's coming off nicely, but after a few winds here, I'm going to check and see. Now I'm lowering the rod while I'm not winding, and the line seems to be twisting on itself. The coils seem to be twisting up, so that tells me the spool needs to be flipped over, otherwise the line will be twisted on the reel and we'll always regret it because it'll always be making messes. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. "26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. We'll do 35. That'll be good enough, I'll bet. But there is one loop in the reel that is sticking out. It's not flat up against the spool. So I may be making a huge mess here. I'm trying not to pile the line onto itself while I do this. As I strip the line off, see it. If you guys weren't watching, I'd slide over and do this around the room probably. Walk around the room and attach it to the backs of chairs and things like that. Now I'm just piling it up. Ooh, I just got rid of it. Just got rid of that loop. That's good. I had to lose a lot of line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Note that I'm running it through my fingers again. My thumb and forefinger. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And I'm watching the line as it comes off the floor just to make sure I don't pick up a big rat's nest. because that'd be a problem too. There we are. That's what it looks like when they pull on the rod, that it gets a nice bend to it, and yet there's a nice backbone here. You see how that wasn't bending? That was a little bit stiff there. So it's a powerful little rod, even though it's so tiny. I've caught quite large fish on it. Sometimes big bass, like in the 16, 17 inch range. Occasionally a pike in the 20 to 25 inch range. Even on this monofilament sewing thread. And I do that by playing the fish carefully. I make sure I'm ready for them to pull hard and let that reel go, that reel handle go. Let it bump my hand while they pull it so that they're pulling that reel backwards. But I let the reel handle bump my hand. I don't let it run free. Otherwise it could create a rat's nest where the reel keeps going and the fish stops and makes a big mess in the reel. So a lot of people set their drag, and that works too, but I'd want a heavier line to do that. I'd do that with my 3-pound test line maybe, but not the sewing thread. We're gonna put a 3mm lure on here. That's a really tiny lure. That's what I want right there. Look at how tiny that is. Can you see it? It's hard to put the line into the ring there. Okay, I'm putting the line into the eye. There it goes. Close. Yep, I think I went through. Maybe I'll just tie a improve clinch knot. I'll just do that. We're gonna spin this thing around a couple times, like 3, 4, 5 times. Spin it around. I think I did 5 there. Take my tag end and go through the little loop just over the lure. The loop of line just over the lure. Right there, I did it. And then I'm going to take the tag end again and go through the loop I just made with my line. If I can. It's hard to see with this lighting. It's bad lighting. Bad for videoing too, isn't it? There we go. Put that right on in there. Really close. Just gotta grab it. There it is. That's the tag end there. Moisten it and cinch it tight. When it gets down by the hook, I'm gonna pull it tight like this so I don't fray the line. There we are. Nice sharp hook on it. I can feel it poking my skin. And we'll snip the tag end again. Check out. Uh-oh, did I make it too short? Nope, it's just right. I want just a little bit. But if you get too close and you make it too short, that tag end, then your knot can sometimes slip just a little bit and that tag end will come through and it'll come loose. That stinks. But we're done. I'm going to hook that up to here. That's a teeny tiny lure. It's good for when the fish are really fussy, finicky eaters. Now this reel, the anti-reverse doesn't work. So it always wants to go backwards. Usually you can put it on anti-reverse and then the reel will not go backwards and it would keep it kind of tight like this, but that doesn't work on this one. So what I do is use a rubber band. I just go around the spool, around the handle. Just keeps that handle from turning and making a mess. I got a little bit of tightness here, a little bit of a bend in the rod, doesn't bother me too much, but I don't store the rods bent over the summertime when I'm not using them. Because again, same as the sneaky bobber, I don't want that rod to get into a bent memory like this. I want it to be straight. We got one down, a couple more to go. That's how I'll do it with each of these. It'll be easier with the 3-pound and 2-pound, I think, because it's a bigger spool. It should come off a little bit better. But I'll do essentially the same thing. The knot I use to tie the lure on might be a little different. With the stronger line, I might use the knot that has a little loop in it so that the lure is hanging in the middle of a little loop in your line. That's supposed to give it a little bit more action. I feel like it gives the fish a little more to look at too as far as line goes. So I don't know if that's the kind of knot that I really want to use or not. I think about it often, wondering if that double line where it makes a loop, it's a double line there. Does that give the fish too much to look at? When they're finicky and fussy and they're not sure they want to eat that lure, if they see a double line, are they thinking, yeah, I'm not sure if this is a natural thing that I want to eat? Just something to think about. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Thanks for watching.